Take that cup away from her. June Mercer's voice stopped the Caruso family lawyer mid-sentence. Around the dining table, armed captains, physicians, and relatives turned toward the soft-bodied caregiver standing beside Lucia Caruso's chair. One doctor exhaled sharply. You were hired to keep her comfortable, not interrupt legal proceedings. June ignored him. Lucia's fingers had begun trembling only after the silver tea tray arrived. Her eyes, clear 10 minutes earlier, now drifted toward the competency petition beneath the lawyer's hand. June lifted the porcelain cup. A pale medicinal ring clung beneath the rim. She hasn't swallowed enough to become confused yet, June said. So we still have time. The nurse beside the tray moved for Lucia's shoulder. Dominic Caruso caught her wrist. Silence struck the room harder than a gunshot. Dominic released the nurse, took the cup from June, and poured it across the white tablecloth. What does she drink instead? Water. From a sealed bottle. He opened one himself. Lucia drank, blinked twice, then looked at the lawyer. That document transfers my voting authority to Dominic before I am declared incompetent. Every face turned toward him. Dominic tore the petition in half. Until this is explained, June controls my aunt's care. By trusting her, he had just endangered his inheritance. 3 days earlier, he had not known her name. June knew the pill was wrong before the resident swallowed it. The tablet in Mr. Bell's palm was scored down the middle, though his evening medication was always smooth and blue. She closed his fingers gently. Hold this for me, Walter. Across the common room, Nurse Keene frowned. It came from the approved cart. So did yesterday's, and yesterday's made him sleep through breakfast. June checked the blister pack, matched the printed time to her handwritten log, and found the substitution, a sedative placed where a blood pressure pill belonged. Mr. Bell watched with frightened patience until she returned with the correct dose and water. You notice what everyone else rushes past, Lucia said from her wheelchair. June smiled, but the praise landed where praise always hurt. Her father had called her indispensable while she managed his appointments, meals, and debts. Later, he accused her of controlling every breath he took. Since then, usefulness had felt dangerously close to ownership. At the nurse's station, June added the incident to the leather notebook she bought herself. The official software permitted summaries. Her notebook preserved details. Meals finished, water refused, hands trembling, voices recognized. Rosa Bell, Walter's daughter, squeezed June's arm before leaving. When you open that advocacy office, call me first. June had not told anyone she had submitted the certification application. Lucia had guessed. That evening, June received a message ordering her to the Caruso estate with all records concerning Lucia. Her supervisor advised compliance, then glanced at June's fitted cardigan. Try to look less domestic. They'll expect someone authoritative. June buttoned the cardigan without changing it. She could refuse Dominic Caruso and protect the job she had. Instead, she copied her notes, locked the originals inside her apartment, and carried only the duplicate through the iron gates. The library doors closed behind her. Dominic stood beside the fire, holding a page bearing her name. You recorded that my aunt becomes lucid 17 minutes after refusing tea, he said. Why was that sentence removed before your report reached me? June stared at the altered page. She had never submitted that sentence. You stole my report. June's accusation landed before Dominic could offer her a chair. He set the altered page on the library table. I obtained it from Dr. Voss. That sentence was in my private notebook, not the official chart. His expression sharpened. Then someone accessed records they should never have seen. June should have walked out. Instead, she noticed the silver tray beside Lucia's empty place. Bring your aunt in, she said. Dominic glanced at the tray. You think the tea matters more than the report. I think both were changed by someone who expects you to trust paper over behavior. Minutes later, Lucia entered between Nurse Keene and Dr. Voss. The physician began explaining that stress worsened her confusion. June replaced the prepared tea with water from a sealed bottle before Lucia could drink. Lucia took 3 sips. Her stare cleared. She named everyone in the room, corrected the date, and pulled the competency petition closer. "This removes my authority over the residences," she said, "and gives Dominic voting control." Dominic went still. June saw something colder than anger pass through him. Not greed. Recognition. "The hearing is in 72 hours, he said. "If she is declared incompetent, I inherit control. If your records are right, someone is manufacturing evidence." "You need my notes," June replied. "I need unrestricted access to her medication, food, and hydration. No locked cabinets. No instructions without me. You disclose every discovery immediately and accept security. I accept cooperation, not confinement." For one charged second, neither yielded. Dominic's attention dropped to her steady hands, then rose to her face. "Agreed," he said. June did not tell him that her father's accusation still made accepting help feel dangerous. Dominic did not tell her his mother had died after refusing the protection he tried to force upon her. A phone vibrated on the table. June answered. Her supervisor's voice shook. "The licensing board received a complaint. They say you manipulated a patient to interfere with a family inheritance." Dominic reached for the phone, then stopped. "May I?" he asked. June placed it in his hand. The second resident stopped breathing clearly enough to frighten the nurse, but not long enough to trigger the alarm. June crossed the room before anyone finished calling her name. "Mr." Bell's eyes were open, his chest moving in shallow, delayed lifts. She checked his pulse, smelled the sweetness of crushed medication on his breath, and looked toward the locked cabinet. "Who gave him his evening dose?" Nurse Keene raised one hand. "The chart says—" I asked who gave it. Dominic stood behind June with 2 guards at the door. "Answer her." Keene swallowed. "I did." June opened. "Mr." Bell's mouth found blue powder beneath his tongue and ordered water, fresh air, and the emergency physician. The pill had not been swallowed whole. It had dissolved too quickly, delivering a sedative before his blood pressure medication could work. When Mr. Bell's breathing steadied, June turned on Dominic. "Unlock every medication cabinet. Those cabinets contain controlled drugs. They also contain whatever nearly killed him." His jaw tightened. "My security chief keeps the keys. Then your security chief is part of my problem." The guards shifted. Dominic studied her for one hard second, then handed over his own master key. It was the first adjustment, and everyone in the room understood its cost. Inside the cabinet, June found no obvious substitution. The labels matched. The counts matched. But one blister pack had been resealed with clear tape instead of pharmacy foil. A small victory, and a worse question. Someone had not merely changed a dose, they had learned exactly how much routine could hide in plain sight from physicians. Dominic ordered the entire floor sealed. June caught his wrist before he could signal the guards toward her bag. "No searches without my permission." His gaze dropped to her hand. Heat rushed through her palm, sharpened by the awareness of his body so close to hers. He could have removed her fingers. Instead, he lifted his free hand and dismissed the guard approaching her. "No one touches her belongings," he said. The respect unsettled her more than force would have. Later, in Lucia's sitting room, June compared meal trays, water intake, and medication times while Dominic held the lamp nearer. Their shoulders almost touched. She became aware of the steady breadth of him beside her, and of the way his attention followed her concentration rather than her curves. "You watch people as if missing one detail could kill them," she said. It already did. He told her about his mother refusing treatment while he increased guards, doctors, and pressure until she stopped telling him what she felt. By the time he understood, silence was not consent. She was gone. June's hand moved toward his, then stopped. "I won't let you repeat that with Lucia." "I know." The words were quiet, stripped of command. A copied hydration sheet showed Lucia drinking full glasses during periods when June remembered untouched water. June independently checked kitchen waste logs and found the same drinks discarded minutes after Nurse Keene signed the chart. At the evening briefing, Dr. Voss called the discrepancy caregiver memory. Dominic placed June's notebook at the center of the table. "Her memory found what your system missed. From now on, every doctor and nurse follows June Mercer's instructions regarding my aunt." Public authority changed the room. It also painted a target across June's back. She could have left after the briefing. Instead, she asked Rosa to bring overnight clothes and chose the guest room beside Lucia's. Forced proximity became choice. Then an alarm sounded downstairs. Mr. Bell was confused again and asking why Lucia's tea tasted bitter. June's name appeared twice on the same report, but only one signature belonged to her. She laid both pages beneath the conference room lights. The first carried her notes. Lucia had eaten half a sandwich, refused tea, finished 6 ounces of water, and recognized the evening nurse. The second replaced those details with progressive disorientation and claimed June had observed wandering behavior she had never seen. Dr. Voss folded her arms. "Caregivers make corrections, not after submission." June pointed to the staple holes. "This page was inserted later. The pressure marks underneath still match my original." Dominic looked from the documents to the silver tray beside Lucia. The false hydration totals, the bitter tea, and the resealed blister pack no longer looked like separate failures. Someone was building a medical history that existed only on paper. Lucia entered without assistance and identified the altered page before anyone prompted her. "That sentence was written to make me disappear while I was still alive." The room went silent. Dominic rose. "This board will not examine my aunt today." A lawyer warned him that refusing evaluation could accelerate the incompetency petition. Dominic did not look away from June. "Then record why I refused." He turned to the physicians, family representatives, and men lining the walls. "Effective immediately, June Mercer has final authority over Lucia Caruso's medication, meals, hydration, visitors, and evaluations. No one overrides her without Lucia's consent." For once, June did not shrink from every face turning toward her. Nurse Keene leaves the floor. The tea service stops. All medication is opened in front of Lucia or me. Dominic obeyed first. Outside the room, the victory struck them both at once. June's hands trembled from the risk. Dominic covered one with his, but waited until she turned her palm upward. "You may lose everything you expected to inherit," she whispered. "I nearly let them erase her because the paperwork benefited me." His honesty closed the distance between them. June touched his face, choosing the contact before fear could rename it dependence. When he kissed her, it was deliberate, restrained, and warm enough to undo the careful loneliness she had mistaken for safety. His phone rang before either stepped back. The family trust had frozen Dominic's access to every residence account. Across the hallway, Dr. Voss watched June calmly. "And I have filed an emergency complaint against your license for practicing beyond your authority. You are not leaving this house." Dominic's order struck harder than the locked doors. June stood in the library with her coat over one arm, while 2 guards waited beyond the threshold. Her records had been removed from the desk. Her phone showed no signal. Even Rosa's messages had been routed through Dominic's security office. "You said cooperation," June replied. "This is confinement. Voss threatened your license, your job, and Rosa's safety. Until I know who she controls, you stay here." The words carried the same polished certainty her father had once used when June managed his medication, appointments, and money. He had begged for help until help became something he resented. Then he accused her of controlling his life. Now Dominic was doing the reverse. He was calling control protection. "You don't get to erase my choice because your fear is effective," she said. His face tightened. "My mother died because I let her refuse help, and Lucia is being erased because everyone keeps deciding for her." The truth landed between them, painful because neither could deny it. Dominic reached for the copied notebook on the table. "I need these secured. They are mine. They are evidence." "So am I, apparently." He took the notebook anyway. That was his mistake. June waited until the house quieted, then used the service stairs Rosa had noticed earlier. She left without telling Dominic, determined to retrieve the original medication logs from Harbor House before Voss could destroy them. That was hers. At the residence, the night corridor smelled of bleach and chamomile. June found the records room unlocked, shelves stripped except for one box bearing her initials. Inside were photocopies of Lucia's meal charts and a legal packet repeating the phrase emergency continuity clause. Before June could read further, Dr. Voss stepped from the adjoining office. "You always did confuse devotion with authority," Voss said. "Caregivers like you become indispensable, then act wounded when families remind you who owns the decisions." June slid the meal charts beneath her coat. "Patients own the decisions. Patients lose money. Institutions preserve it." An alarm sounded upstairs. June ran. Lucia lay barely conscious in bed, her pulse slow, a dissolving tablet beneath her tongue. Nurse Keene stood beside the medication cart, pale and shaking. Dominic arrived seconds later with his guards. He saw June, the tablet, and the open records room. For one terrible moment, neither trusted the other. Keene pulled the fire alarm. Sprinklers erupted, soaking the corridor as a shredder in the records room roared to life. Dominic's men stopped it, but most original logs had already vanished into wet pulp. Voss disappeared through the service exit. Lucia survived, but the hearing was moved to morning. Dominic looked at her as if the distance between them had become a locked door. "You left without telling me." June stared back. "Because you made asking permission the price of leaving." Neither apologized yet. June's hidden meal notebook remained dry beneath her coat. So did the clause. Lucia opened her eyes 12 minutes before the hearing and said June's name clearly. June had spent the night rebuilding the destroyed record from her private notebook. Every meal, every glass of water, every trembling hand, every period of clarity. Beside her, Dominic stood without issuing a single order. Nurse Keene broke first. She confessed that Dr. Voss had instructed her to replace Lucia's evening tablets and add sedative powder to the tea. Keene claimed she believed the doses were temporary, meant only to stabilize Lucia before evaluations. June placed the resealed blister pack beside the bitter, stained cup. "You watched her disappear," June said. "Temporary does not make it harmless." Keene surrendered the remaining tablets. With the proper medication restored, water measured, and food given slowly, Lucia's pulse steadied. By morning, she could name every trustee, every residence, and every clause in the petition. The victory was real. The board could no longer call Lucia's clarity accidental, and Keene's confession gave them an operator. So was the damage between June and Dominic. In the empty corridor, Dominic returned her notebook with both hands. "I can find you. I took your records." Calling it protection did not make either choice mine to take. June accepted it. "I left alone because I wanted to prove you could not control me. I made Lucia easier to reach." "No more orders disguised as care," he said. "No more disappearing disguised as independence." Their new rule settled between them. He would ask, she would share. Dominic proved it immediately. At the hearing room doors, he stopped. "Do you want security inside?" "One guard outside. None beside Lucia." He nodded and changed the order. Before lawyers, physicians, and Caruso captains, Dominic credited June by name for restoring Lucia's clarity and identifying Keene's substitutions. Then he stepped back and gave June the floor. Lucia entered walking beside her. Across the room, Dr. Voss smiled, not nervously, almost with satisfaction. The clause should have protected Lucia. Instead, it had been waiting for her to recover. June read the legal petition while the hearing chamber filled around them. The phrase emergency continuity appeared beside every reference to unexpected competency, temporary medical instability, and disputed control. It was not a safeguard against decline. It was a trigger. She placed the packet before Dominic. Voss needed Lucia lucid in public. His gaze sharpened. Why sedate her at all? To manufacture a documented pattern. Confusion, recovery, confusion again. Enough instability to justify outside control the moment she disproved permanent incompetence. Across the room, Dr. Voss called the board to order. Behind her, representatives from every Caruso residence took their seats, carrying sealed trust files. The destroyed logs, Keen's confession, and Lucia's restored clarity had not broken Voss's plan. They had completed it. June turned pages until she found the transfer language. At noon, if Lucia appeared competent during a contested hearing after documented impairment, every resident account would move into a neutral emergency conservatorship. The conservator listed was a foundation chaired by Helen Voss. Dominic's face went still. Keen remains guilty. Yes, but Voss allowed us to expose her because Keen's confession makes the medical crisis official. Their victory had gathered the board, the residents' delegates, and every trust document inside Caruso Harbor House. The transfer would activate in 18 minutes. Voss looked at June, certain a caregiver would defend Lucia but never understand the machinery surrounding her. June closed the petition. We don't stop the hearing. Dominic did not seize the papers or issue an order. What do you need me to do? Get me the floor. Then follow my plan, even when it costs you everything. He opened the chamber doors. After you, June. Together, they entered before the clock reached noon. The clock above the hearing chamber showed 14 minutes to noon when Dr. Helen Voss locked the doors. Emergency procedure, she said, while two court officers sealed the exits and trustees opened their files. No one leaves until continuity is secured. June stood beside Lucia at the center table. Dominic waited one step behind her, close enough to help, far enough to prove he understood the rule they had made. Voss addressed the board. Miss Mercer is an emotional caregiver with no authority to interpret financial law. She doesn't need to, Dominic said. She needs the floor. Voss smiled. And will you command us to listen? Dominic looked at June instead. Do you want me to release the residence records? The question steadied her more than any promise could have. Yes, all of them. He signaled once. Screens around the chamber filled with medication logs, meal charts, water records, and staff schedules. Voss's advantage was institutional. Signatures, titles, and reports carrying official seals. June answered with patterns ordinary people could understand. She showed that Lucia became confused after tea, but recovered after water. Mr. Bell's breathing slowed only when Nurse Keen worked evenings. 3 residents supposedly refused lunch on days their untouched trays were removed before June's shift. Hydration totals rose, while kitchen waste logs showed full glasses poured away. This was not decline, June said. It was cycling. Sedate them before evaluations, restore them before public appearances, then call the change instability. Voss lifted the altered report bearing June's name. Your own documentation contradicts you. June placed her private notebook beside it. Mine records tomato soup on Tuesday. Yours records chicken broth. Lucia is allergic to chicken. I would never have written that. Lucia raised her hand. On a on. Residents and family representatives testified to bitter tea, missing pills, and sudden clarity. Voss had underestimated the people she considered assets and the caregiver who had listened when they spoke softly. 10 minutes remained. A board attorney announced that the conservatorship transfer had already begun. June turned to Dominic. She had a plan, but speaking it would cost him everything his family had built. Dissolve the Caruso trust before the clause can seize it. Murmurs broke across the chamber. Without the trust, Dominic would lose the residence's inherited voting authority, funeral holdings, and the structure supporting his debt network. Voss leaned toward him. Do this, and your family becomes ordinary. Dominic's eyes stayed on June. Will dissolving it protect their money? Yes, if you submit every residence to independent oversight immediately. He handed the family seal to the board attorney. Then kill the trust. At Dominic's order, his lawyers filed the dissolution. He surrendered criminal voting control, opened the accounts to state investigators, and transferred patient funds into individually governed protections. At noon, Voss's conservatorship activated over nothing. The locked doors opened. Dominic had created June's opportunity. June had shown him what power had to die. Outside, residents waited to learn whether freedom would feel safer than inheritance had. The first resident to receive her own account statement cried before she signed it. June sat beside Mrs. Alvarez at Harbor House, explaining each line until the woman understood where her money would go and who could touch it. No Caruso seal appeared. A residence council replaced the family vote, and an outside board reviewed every medication change. Dominic watched from the doorway. He had lost 3 properties, most of the funeral trust, and the leverage his debt network drew from the residences. State investigators examined his records. He did not call the losses unfair. I built safety around obedience, he told Lucia. That made what Voss did easier. June spoke next. I treated asking for help like surrender. When I left alone, I risked the people I meant to protect. Accountability did not erase consequence. It made partnership possible. 6 weeks later, June completed her elder advocacy certification and accepted the directorship of an independent service across from Harbor House. She still worked morning care shifts twice weekly. She wanted authority without losing the intimacy of adjusting a blanket, measuring water, or waiting while someone found courage to answer. The office lease carried her name alone. Dominic had offered no money. On opening night, he arrived without guards and waited until Rosa finished arranging chairs. His dark suit made him look controlled, but he kept his hands open at his sides. The residences voted to keep me as operations advisor, he said. No unilateral authority. No private medical access. They can remove me. That frightens you. Yes, the admission warmed her deeper than certainty had. He stepped closer, stopping before contact. You have a future that does not require me. I need to know whether you want me in it. June looked at the office bearing her name, then at the man who had learned that love could not be imposed for someone's own good. She touched his face first. I want you beside me, she said. Not ahead of me. His kiss was unhurried, asking even after she had answered. June drew him closer by choice, while behind them residents laughed inside a building that belonged to their decisions. The call bell rang as Dominic reached for June's hand. He stopped outside room 12, where a resident sat rigidly beside an untouched lunch tray. Months earlier, June would have entered alone and explained later. Dominic would have followed without asking. Now he waited. June stepped inside, lowered herself beside the woman, and checked the water glass, medication card, and tremor in her fingers. Would you like Mr. Caruso to come in? The resident studied Dominic through the doorway. If he listens, he will, June said. Dominic entered after the invitation, took the chair June indicated, and remained silent while the woman described a dosage that made mornings disappear. June recorded every detail beneath the name of her independent advocacy service. When she finished, Dominic offered his hand instead of taking hers. June accepted. Together they walked out at the resident's pace, interrupted by another quiet bell down the corridor. June's victory was not simply proving that Lucia had been drugged. Her transformation came from learning that autonomy does not require isolation, and that accepting help can remain a choice. She began as a caregiver whose attention was dismissed as service. She ended as an advocate whose records, judgment, and courage changed a system. Dominic's change was structural. He did not earn love by becoming gentler while keeping the same power. He surrendered the inheritance, authority, and secrecy that allowed protection to become control. Their relationship survived because trust became a practice. He learned to ask, she learned to share, and both accepted accountability. What would you have chosen if saving hundreds of residents required destroying your family's legacy? Share your answer in the comments. Subscribe for more emotionally intense Mafia Boss romance stories, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next heroine who makes power learn respect. End of script. Sweet dreams.